The 10 worst albums. You know, not the albums I say are the worst. The albums that everybody else says are the worst. You know, all the clever bloody music critics out there, Rolling Stone and all those guys. You know, the ones that they say are the worst. You know. Well, those 10 albums that everyone else seems to think are the worst albums, how bad are they? So, the other day, in an endeavour to find more albums to hate, because that's the sort of stuff you love, so I was trying to find some other awful albums to hate on, and I was actually using AI to search far and wide, and it was coming up with the same, I would say 10 albums. There was 10 albums that it seemed to think were the worst albums ever made. And I thought, well, okay then, let's do the 10 worst albums ever made. That sounds like a great video. That'll get a lot of views. So, I set about doing the right thing and put the headphones on and have to listen to them. And I've got to be honest, my conclusions were slightly different. Yet again, me, being the curmudgeonly contrarian that I am, was seeing the world different to everybody else. And so I thought it would be more important, really, to, come onto this channel and see how many people agree with me and push, create a counter-narrative that maybe some of these albums aren't as bad as you think. And in most cases, they're actually quite good. And in some cases, they're really good. Right, so let's get straight into this, shall we? Right, so at number 10, and I this isn't particularly ranked. It just is in an order that AI came up with. I haven't tinkered with this. All I've done is listen to them and then come away and then sat down before you to relay what I thought in terms of the listen experience. So at number 10, we've got St. Anger by Metallica. Now, the first thing I have to say about this album, I really do like the artwork. They seem to be going They seem to be going against the usual heavy metal, spiky writing, chrome effects, lightning bolts, owls with electric eyes that can kill squirrels at 100 yards. Well, not so much the last one, but you know what I'm saying. There's a certain, imagery that goes with heavy metal, which there's other ways of being heavy. And I think that's the key here with this one for me. St. Anger by Metallica is an exploration in other ways of being heavy. Now, first of all, why do we think everyone hates it? Well, there's a whole load of albums around this point, isn't there? After Metallica made the Black Album and became the biggest band in the world, right? You would expected them to then sort of churn that out for at least 2 or 3 albums. But straight away, they start to, just experiment with who they are, what they are. And I'm sure with the terrible, stuff that happened to that band, especially having Cliff Burton die at such a key point in the band's history, and then having to deal with that and the way they dealt with that. And of course, St. Anger coincided with their documentary that I thought was incredible, Some Kind of Monster, where we could see James Hetfield was struggling with some sort of internal turmoil plus sort of an alcohol problem, and eventually he goes away and then comes back almost quite changed, and I thought that was quite amazing. So this album is all around that. And so you have to ask yourself this question, I think. Do you want the childish, immature idea of a scary, frightening world that's put across on Ride the Lightning Master of Puppets? The more infantile version of the horrors that exist out there in the world? Or do you want something which is a little bit more grown up? Because for me, St. Anger is heavy metal that's a little bit more grown up. Now, why do people not like it? Well, it doesn't have that crunchy, distorted guitar sound, and most famously, it's got that boingy snare drum, isn't it? Where people said that Lars Ulrich had taken the snares off and was just banging, and you're just getting like a boingy note coming out of it. Well, me listening to it, some of them sound like they've been recorded like that, others don't. They just sound like the snares are on, but what we've got is an incredibly roomy sound. This is reality, right? This is reality stripped right down. Within that, all the stuff that I love about Metallica that they used to do pre the Black Album, the extended arrangements, strange, you know, going from one section to another, not quite adding up, that sort of Black Sabbath way of exploring a song. They're doing all that. I gotta be honest, when Metallica push the envelope on an album like Lulu or an album like this, Santanga, I enjoy it. I find it more interesting. I sit there not knowing what to expect next, and I start to realise what a great band they are and the way that that band works, the dynamics within that band that make them so successful. Because the thing with Metallica, it really is the fact that they're greater than the sum of their parts. I think in terms of virtuosity, it's probably Trilu Giuliano, you know, the bass player they got, you know, he is obviously technically the most advanced player in the band because he was brought in because of that. But after that, Lars Ulrich is not a technical drummer. Kirk Hammett is not a technical guitarist. Together, though, they have a magic. James Hetfield, however, is an incredible singer with a signature voice and a brilliant rhythm guitarist. And I really feel that there is something coming off James Hetfield on this album, which is quite powerful. So, me putting this album on and having a listen to it, as I did the other night, I have rated it great. This isn't the worst album. It's not even a bad album. This is a full-on great. And when you get the great, I'll put my thumb up like that, you see. Right, so, you get how this is going to work. Right, so, I know there's a lot of progressive rock fans out there, aren't there? There's a load of progressive rock fans. And there's a couple of albums, and they made this list. Remember, I didn't pick this list. This was picked by AI, right? By culling together all the sort of stuff. All, you know how AI works. So what I'm trying to say, this is not my list. This is what AI thinks are the 10 worst albums. It came up with a big write-up for why they were terrible with it. And I thought, hang on, right? No. Now, our, beloved progressive rock genre, which I know many of you love very much and I love very much, you know, if we were looking at the Rolling Stones 10 greatest albums, yes, we'd expect there to be Dark Side of the Moon in there, but they would try and pretend that's not a progressive rock album. But you know, as a genre, they look down their noses, they do, whoever they are. They look down their noses at progressive rock. So it's surprising on here that we have two progressive rock bands with albums on here. Now, the first one we come up is the one I got at number 2, which is Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Love Beach. In the progressive rock world, Love Beach has almost become the emblem of the worst album. It represents possibly the most outlandish, the most sort of critic-worthy of all the progressive rock bands, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Right? What it represents is them not being able to deal with punk. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, of course, John Peel famously said that they were a waste of talent and electricity. Now, as a talent, they are incredible. Greg Late's skills as a singer, bass player and guitarist is quite phenomenal. Obviously, Keith Emerson is probably the greatest progressive rock keyboard player and one of the great progressive rock composers, able to compose like a classical composer. And Carl Palmer is a virtuoso drummer coming out of the Buddy Rich school, and he is able to negotiate these parts somewhere between a Buddy Rich and an orchestral percussionist on speed. That's how I always feel. There's a certain way that Carl Palmer plays, which has been criticised by many parties, probably by me as well, but he does flow with the music in the way a classical musician does, and so ELP breathes. It has sort of that rubato flow for it, and this gives it, I think, there's a certain pomposity because they are able to pull off these classical pieces of music in a rock band setting, which is very easy for the critics to latch onto. And so a lot of the hate that comes progressive rock's way may well apply to ELP, right? Whereas it probably doesn't apply so much to Hatfield and the North, if you see what I'm saying. So in 1976, 1977, punk comes out. Of course, ELP, they don't know what to do. And they go off, you know, to some, you know, sunny, you know, paradise, and set up in a recording studio there, spending lots of the record company's money making this album, Love Beach. And worse than that, when it comes to making the album artwork, they toddle down to their local beach, you know, in this paradise, and they're all tanned up, of course, wearing shirts, you know, chest showing, you know, virile young men at that point, and a photograph is taken for the front cover, which, for some reason, and I've never quite understood it, has become derided across the whole of the music industry. Now, I have done videos on here. I did a video, and I might have to do this one again because I think it's been forgotten. I did a video called When Jazz Rock Fusion Stars Take Off Their Shirts, and it was a real, you know, important, culturally important study of when jazz rock musicians appear on their album covers, at least with their shirt off. Some of them had the whole lot off. Now, nobody's batted an eyelid of this. Nobody has. And yet ELP, I think they've been on foot fairly, you know, pillared by the establishment for that cover. The truth is, what's contained within? Well, I have to be honest, what we've got here is a number of quite short songs, right, with a little bit of a different sound than what we would have had from ELP before. I'll try and describe it. It's very subtle. And then on side 2, we have an epic called An Officer and a Gentleman. Now, the epic is really interesting. It's great. It's got some full-on ELP in the middle. It's got a touch of the musical theatre about it. The sidelong epic they'd done before on Works called Pirates was the same. But it actually is wound in a little for a sidelong epic. You could tell that they have thought, how do we write something that lasts for a whole side without just filling up with lots of virtuosity? It's not quite as virtuoso as you would expect, although there is a middle section in there. And what they do is they tell a story, and it's quite an English story. It's almost like a story that you expect Noel Coward to tell. The production's wonderful. Carl Palmer's never sounded better as far as I'm concerned. His drums are incredible on this album. When you flip it over back onto side 1 and listen to the tracks on there, there's some interesting stuff on here. The only thing I have with this album is there is a little bit of rock gratuity, a bit of misogyny going on. And if I was making a funny video, I would probably do a critique of some of the lyrics on side 1 because they're pretty horrendous. But this stuff's fine. It's okay, right? It's a more cogent and coherent effort from ELP than Works is. Okay? And a lot of progressive rock fans have said to me, if this had come out with a different cover, with the big epic on side 1, right, a little bit like Tarkus, and then turn it over and have all the other ones on side 2, this album may well be seen in the canon as being one of the great albums. Now, I don't think it's great, right? I think this is a good album, right? That is where I would put it, but it's not a bad album at all. And I think if you're an ELP fan and you enjoy them and you've got everything and you haven't got this one because everyone says it's terrible, you know, you've been conned. Go and get it because it's a good album. Right, so at number 3 on this list, I have Van Halen 3 by Van Halen. Okay? Now, we all know that Van Halen has as its singer Dave Lee Roth. And we all know that the albums that Dave Lee Roth made with Van Halen are the greatest rock albums ever made. Because Van Halen at that point were the greatest rock band in the world. They were incredible. Eddie Van Halen was the first rock guitarist to really come out and go beyond Hendrix. They were a once musically profound, and they really are, to me. Van Halen's musically profound. You feel the work of a genius with Eddie Van Halen. And it's not just the fact that he's a virtuoso. It's nothing to do with that. He's more like a mad professor. And he's more like the sort of mad professor we have here in England, you know, that go and work out in their shed in the garden. You feel like he's cooking up all sorts of strangeness for you. And I love that about Eddie Van Halen. But he's balanced by Dave Lee Roth, who is vaudeville personified. He goes right back to the beginning. It's as though he picked up rock music and goes, look, this is what rock music really is. It's entertainment. And he goes right back to the early days. He's almost like a sort of cross between Robert Plant and Al Jolson. Don't imagine it, because it will look terrible, but you take it from me, it's those two elements that are in there for me. And this creates a classic band. Of course, a lot of these rock bands, as they did enter the 80s, and what's strange with Van Halen is as they entered the 80s, a lot of the stuff that they laid the groundworks for start to come through, and these hair metal bands started to emerge with a fantastic guitarist fronted by some sort of lot more clownic, if that's a word, clowning frontman. And so Van Halen would have to exist in that world that they'd created. David Lee Roth split, he left, made a couple of incredible albums, but that's not what we're talking about here. And Van Halen then brought in Sammy Hagar, you know, a little bit lost as he was, you know, with his solo career after being in Montrose, you know, and he had a reasonable solo career, but coming into Van Halen, it created a different type of Van Halen, often called Van Hager. I'm not a Van Hager fan. It's a lot more conservative in a way. It's not quite as wacky and strange. Then Sammy goes. And at this point, the legacy of Van Halen has created a whole bunch of guitar heroes with Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Yngwie Malmsteen, Vinnie Moore. They're all selling, you know, millions of albums, making almost like guitar instrumental music and appearing on various rock bands as a sort of star guitar player. And at that point, there were some new kids on the block, and it was Extreme. And they owed a huge debt to Van Halen. And so this seemed a really good idea to pull in Gary Cherone into this band and make an album with them. Now, this album, almost like you want to pass it by. Let's deal with the artwork. The artwork's horrendous. It looks like a bad photocopy with some terrible lettering stuck on from a Letraset, you know, and used to scribble and put those letters. It's just awful. You think a multi-million band at this level would be able to come up with something better than that. Right, the title Van Halen 3 is not only not very imaginative, but it actually tries to harken back to the early days. And if they were trying to do that, that was a bad idea, because there's no Dave Lee Roth there. Gary Cherone is an incredibly capable vocalist, and I don't know what he could have done. But there's a big difference between Gary Cherone and Dave Lee Roth. And there's a big difference between Gary Cherone and Sammy Hagar. What do I think is the problem with this album? Dave Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar were the equal of Eddie Van Halen. And the trouble that happened is that Eddie Van Halen has to be reined in by someone that's equal in age, in status, in sort of charisma. All these things need to be there. And I think Sammy Hagar was able to do that, and then when he got too frustrated, he jumped. Gary Cherone, suddenly, he disappears. See, as much as I don't like Van Hagar, I can imagine it, and I can see Sammy Hagar up front. But once Gary Cherone's in, it sort of just turns into a bit of a Van Halen solo album. Van Halen's not in a great place. He's coming up with the stuff, and there is a lot of innovation on guitar on here. You can see that's still going on, but it doesn't quite have the bite that it did before. But I think the real problem is the fact that Gary Cherone just was not a strong enough foil in that he really needs to be in opposition. You need to feel that they're going to have a bust up at any time. I think that's the key with Van Halen, perhaps, and that's what we used to. I had a listen to the album the other day. It suffers, interestingly, for the same thing that the one that followed it did, which was the final album that they did when David Lee Roth returned. It's as though they're doing all the right things, but he's tired. Maybe there's a certain point in every band's development where you become irrelevant. There's nothing you can do about it. And I think that this is what had happened here with Van Halen. I think there's an irrelevancy at some point that emerges. And by that I mean that the audience loves the band, but don't love them enough to follow them this far. So I have rated this album okay. And so what we've had with the first three albums is a great with the thumbs up, a good and an okay. Right, at number 4 on the list is Cut the Crap by The Clash. Now this is sort of like the last Clash album. I believe Mick had gone, Topper Headon had gone. It was Paul Simonon, I think, and Joe Strummer, if I remember rightly. I'm no expert on The Clash, you know why? Because I'm not a massive fan of The Clash. Now, I'm a massive fan of their best records. I'm a massive fan of Rock the Casbah, or Shall I Say, or Should I Go, London Calling, or Guns of Brixton. I love all those tunes. I'm pretty sure that there's a best of that I would love. But then when I get the albums and listen to them, they seem to not have enough of those types of songs. So we get, pastiches, rock and roll pastiches, bits of reggae stuff. Now, my ultimate favourite track by them, which is Rock the Casbah, of course, was entirely written by Topper Headon. And I wonder how much he added to the band, because with him not being here, what we have is this album, Cut the Crap, which is, it sounds like an attempt to update the ethos of punk. And when we say punk, we mean that sort of revolutionary, let's tear the establishment down and replace it with some sort of Che Guevara-esque, South American, communist state, that type of thing. But for the 80s, update for the 80s. And what it sounds like to me is a noise. There's just no songs on here. That's what it sounds like. And now Mick Jones, who had gone, he at this time formed a band called Big Audio Dynamite that did have some reasonable songs on. I know this because that's where I come in. That year was the year that I think I went into the sixth form, and it became quite obvious that my favourite bands was Yes and Mahavishnu Weather Report, and everybody else in my school was going on about this bloody Big Audio Dynamite and going on about how crap this Cut the Crap was. The Clash let down their fan base here. I'm not sure why, and it could well be, again, when is a band no longer a band? How many elements can you take out of it? Right, some bands are just one person, right? Other bands are greater than the sum of their parts. And I think the Clash are a real example of this, to the point where Joe Strummer is also balanced by Mick Jones, another guy who sings, another guy that writes songs, another guy that is, it's half of the sound. It's half of the sound. I don't know what to say, really. This is a serious thing, because I'm not going to be knocking the Clash. The fact that the Clash are the favourite of the sort of, those sort of middle-aged guys who think they know about music and they want to tell you how much they know, and they're going to tell you how great London Calling is, and they always love the Clash. That's why I criticise them, is because those are people, in terms of the band themselves. There's something there with this band, and it is them all together. Right, there is them all together. I think we've Cut the Crap. Without that, it just becomes unfocused, and their attempt to be nihilist and punky just comes across as noisy. That's what it sounds like to me. So I have given this one the rating Awful. That's thumbs up, down. That's awful. So we have got one album that's pretty awful on this list, and I can agree with AI. But so far we've done 4, and only one's been awful, really, in reality. Right. So the next one on the list is going back to the progressive rock band. Although whether you'd class this as a progressive rock album, I'm not too sure. It's of course Genesis and Calling All Stations. Right. What is this album again? Right, the critics want to have a go at Genesis, right? Now, I would have thought it would be pretty easy to have a go at them for this point, because their last few albums, like Invisible Touch and I Can't Dance, those are just terrible, right? They're terrible. I love all the Genesis albums up to the album Genesis. They're all fantastic. I love Abacab. I love Genesis. Yes, they move towards the poppy, right? But it's still Genesis. And then with Invisible Touch, the tracks like, Illegal Alien and Land of Confusion, what happens is that what happens to the drums is Phil Collins playing them, or are they just buried under a whole bunch of 80s production, or is it drum machines, or is it Simmons drums? Suddenly the sound of the band goes. And everything starts to sound like the production on a Madonna album, like Material Girl. Invisible Touch, Material Girl, I can't tell which one's which. So those albums are pretty awful. This one, right, is not like that. They pull slightly away from the pop, okay? And they start to explore something which is a little bit more band orientated. But of course, the problem is there's no Phil Collins. Now, in all the videos I've done on this channel about Genesis, I've started to think that Phil Collins is Genesis. Right? They need Mike and the other one, Peter. Is it Peter Banks? Tony. I always get every single video. I get Tony Banks and Peter Banks. And why nobody else does? I do every single time. Tony and they're so important. But and here's a contentious point. The band's formed 68, make their first album 69. So in 69 we hear them for the first time. Really 1970 on Trespass. By 1974 Gabriel's gone. 4 years on a band that's been around for 50. The sound of Genesis is Phil Collins. Right? That's the bottom line. Phil Collins can have a solo career, right? Old bass player, guitarist, forgotten his name, the poshest of them all. He can go and do Mike and the Mechanics. He can. Mike Rutherford can. My brain's really rubbish at the moment. It's as soon as I go down the Tony Banks, I lose all faith that anything that I'm thinking is correct. Sorry, I do apologise. I'm trying to do a serious video here. I've forgotten his bloody name again. This is Mike Rutherford. All right, Mike of the Mechanics, he's fine. It's Mike's band. They write brilliant pop songs. It's great. It shows you what a great pop songwriter he is. Phil Collins, he could do his own stuff. It's much more sort of 1980s soul, if you know what I mean. But Genesis has to have Phil Collins singing. And without him singing, I mean, let me put it this way. Calling All Stations, right? I have put it as a good album. It's not a great album, but it's a good album. If the vocals were wiped off, right, and were replaced with Phil Collins, or say someone had got AI in and got it to I mean, what's that going to sound like? And what are the Genesis fans going to think? Now, are they still going to go, yeah, but the production's still so tame and lame and limp, which I think it is. But Calling All Stations is not the awful album everybody says. It's a good album, and I would rather have it than We Can't Dance or Invisible Touch. That's my opinion on it. Right, so let's move on to number 6 now. Number 6 is going to be Never Let Me Down by David Bowie. Now, I'm no Bowie expert. I'm the worst person, and I nearly took it off the list. I thought, what am I going to talk about? I mean, I like David Bowie's stuff. you know, Life on Mars is absolutely brilliant song. It's a brilliant song. Ashes to Ashes is a brilliant song. Let's Dance, you know, with all those Stevie Ray Vaughan guitar breaks. I love that, you know. Fame, when he goes all like James Brown, you know, I love all that. I could start listing, you know, Ground Control to Major Tom, Space Odyssey, amazing. Really great. What else? I could probably, like The Clash, come up with a whole double album, I'd say, of songs I absolutely love by David Bowie. When I go and check the albums out, however, especially the classic albums, things like Heroes, the ones I think I should like The Lodger and Scary Monsters, you know, when I get those and you get past the big Heroes, that's a brilliant tune, isn't it? That's a great tune, yeah. Scary Monsters, that's great, I love that. But then when you get in there, it falls into a sort of, I tell you what I don't like, it's the same thing with The Clash, it's rock and roll pastiche. The glam metalers did it, Bowie does it, and I think there's a little bit of that in The Clash. This is an interesting idea, actually. I don't know whether I'm the person to pursue it, and I'm probably wrong anyway, but is there a little... You know how the punk bands came out of that sort of glam metal excess at the beginning, of which we're really pointing to The Sweet and Gary Glitter. So we can't talk about Gary Glitter. Now, I have to say, Gary Glitter, the very first person I loved as a kid, I hate to say, you know, was Gary Glitter. I just loved that. But that sort of British glam rock subfuses through this. And Bowie he's the I mean, he's beyond glam rock, isn't he, as an artist? But when I put those albums on, or even the classic ones, there's just a lot of cod rock and roll pastiche, and I don't like it. It's like, we're going to go back to these days, or we're going to pretend with this. It's like they pretending, you know, they're pretending. You know, I can't explain this. It's not proper rock. It's faux rock. I can't explain it. There's rock riffs there, and they're all posturing, but they're posturing in a way which is knowing. Now, when the 1980s come in, he has an about face, doesn't he, old David Bowie? And he does this album, Let's Dance, which puts him in the same bracket as like a Madonna or a Prince. Massive album, loads of hit singles. And then he follows that up with a couple of lackluster albums. I think there's one called Tonight, and then that's followed up with one called Never Let Me Down. And this is the one that's come up as being one of the terrible David Bowie albums. Now, I have to be honest, I went and listened to it, and I didn't think it was a great album. I didn't even think it was a good album. There didn't seem to be anything on there that was equal to a Life on Mars or a Let's Dance or China Girl. There was nothing on there like that. But as a whole album, it was okay. But what it was incredibly drum machine heavy. He really embraced that aesthetic, whereas on Let's Dance, it had Tony Thompson and that whole Nile Rodgers chic thing going on. And the grooves were monumental. I mean, the drumming on Let's Dance is just some of my favourite drumming ever. Incredible stuff. Here, he moves right down into the realm of, you know, drum machines, too much percussion, gated reverb, DX7s. Now, he said he was trying to go back to make a rock album, but his idea of rock in the 1980s is a very sort of machine-driven idea of rock music. His voice is great on it. He always does write good songs. He's always got great lyrics. He's always got strong hooks in there. Although I often feel that the thing that makes a Bowie song greater is the arrangement. He is really a progressive rock artist. So having Eric Wakeman to arrange Life on Mars or Space Oddity, the weird structure of that, which is like a mini prog epic, is when he's most interesting. But I didn't think this was a terrible album. I'm pretty sure a remix, you know, get rid of some of those drum machines, get a real drummer in, all that bit, you know, be okay. And that's what I've given it. It's an okay, but it's not terrible. We've only had one awful album so far, and that's the Clash one. Right, so we move on now to Black Sabbath.
You're right, chaps. I bet you're glad I've bloody appeared. God, I was listening to that in the background. What a boring load of shite that was. Bloody hell, he can go on, can't he, Andy? But I did say to him, I said, if you're going to do Black Sabbath, don't bloody do it. I'll do the Black Sabbath bit because that's the next one on the list. Because the old AI, right, has said, if you have a look, it says, I had a look as well, and he's right. It says that the worst, one of the worst albums ever made, apparently, is bloody The Forbidden by Black Sabbath, right? That's their penultimate album before they got Ozzy back in for the last one, 13. Now, I don't know about it. I mean, I love Black Sabbath, right? And I won't have a bad word said against them, the greatest band of all bloody time. And The Forbidden, I mean, Tony said he don't like it, and Tony Martin, he was the singer, he came in at one point. Yeah, I know Tony very well. Yeah, he said he don't like it. But they all say they don't like it, don't they? They're all saying it. Or they say that, who knows why. I think it's like they got this bloke in, I remember. He was an American chap. They got this bloke, I think he's called Eric or something like that. And they got him in to produce it, and I don't think he was very good really, because he was more used to doing the old rap. He'd been in this band Body Count, which was do you remember that Ice-T bloke? Do you remember him with the cop killer fella? Do you know him? Do you remember him? Yeah, that one. He was he had that band Body Count, didn't he? They were trying to do heavy metal badly. Oh bloody hell! I've forgotten to put the Andy. I've forgotten to put the microphone. Will it be all right? Yeah, I know. I do shout a bit. Sorry about that, chaps. Forgot to put the old microphone on, you know. Because I rushed over here, you see. I just got home and I had an inkling Andy was going to do it. And he'd said to me the other day, he goes, I'm going to do this list here. The worst albums ever made. What do you think, Dave? I had a look at them. I didn't care about the other ones. They got, I can't say that yet, they got to that one yet, but they got another Brummie band on there, so I was a bit displeased about that, you know, because I always stick up for the Birmingham bands. But then, you know, they've had a go at bloody Black Sabbath here. And so I just got myself, right, a nice chicken kebab. And I was just going to wolf that down, I was. Just going to wolf it down, I was. And then I thought, no. Bombed it over to here, said, come on, sling your hook, Andy, get out the chair, let me in here and explain to the viewers at home, right, and try and explain to them why The Forbidden is actually it's a really good bloody album. It's got all the things that you'd want from Black Sabbath, except for the production. The production's a bit rubbish. Now, I do believe Tony Iommi has gone and remixed it a little bit, you know, now, and they did a remix of it, and I've been listening to that one. I think it's really good. So what you've got on here is you've got like Tony Iommi on guitar, and he's coming to all the riffs, and there's some good Sabbath riffs on there. You've got Tony Martin on singing, which, I mean, he's not Ozzy Osbourne, and he's not Ronnie James Dio. He's Tony Martin. Yeah, so I just thought I'd say that, just so that you don't get confused, because he's not any of those ones. He's him. Anyway, they got the great Cozy Powell, although they produced his drums too much and it doesn't sound like Cozy. It sounds like a drum machine. Yeah, I think that's what's a bit rubbish about it. But in terms of riffage, it's all right, you know, this one is. It's quite good. Now, why don't people like it? I'll tell you why they don't like it. Because they're a funny lot, the bloody rock audience, all right? There's a couple of things they don't like, right? I'll tell you what they are, right? They don't like rap. Anything to do with rap. A proper rocker. I mean, I know there's people listening to Rage Against the Machine. Ain't probably proper rock bands, are they? Bloody hell. Scorpions, that's a bloody proper rock band. Judas Priest, you catch them rapping. No, you don't bloody catch them rapping. So we don't like the rapping, right? Not even keen on a slap bass. I mean, what's all that about when they do it with the thumb? They're all slapping away. No, we don't want any of that. You know, drum machines, don't like the old drum machines. They're bloody rubbish. I mean, who wants to jump up and down to a drum machine? You want to get a bit of the old Cozy behind you, don't you? You know,
from some proper bloke, really banging away on the bloody skins, so you can feel it. That's real music, isn't it, right? And I just think this album's just lacking a bit of that, really. It's just lacking a little bit of all that energy. That's all it is, right? If they can get on, they say they've remixed it, but where the hell's Cozy? He wasn't happy, was he? Because this bloke who came in, this bloke from Body Count, he's saying, can you play it a little bit more like that? Can you play it a little bit more like this? And Cozy's go, who are you bloody telling me how to do stuff? I'm Cozy, bloody pal, you great big nana. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going to sling me hook if you carry on like this. He bloody well did in the end. And then, of course, I remember this is just after that album, Ozzy and Tony, they made it up, didn't they? They made friends. Right, and it was bloody silly, really, wasn't it, for them two to fall out, really? But I think Ozzy gave him a call, Tony did. He said, how you doing, mate? He says, I'm all right, Ozzy, are you all right? And he went, yeah, I'm all right, yeah. He said, we haven't been chatting. He says, no, I haven't been chatting with, we haven't been chatting, have we? No, we haven't. It's a bloody shame, innit, that one, isn't it? And they went, yeah, a little bit, But how you doing? I saw your bloody show, The Osbournes. It's a bloody funny bit that with that dog was crapping all over your bloody house. Oh, I found that dog. How's your dog, Tony? Because Tony's got a dog. He's like bloody Satan's dog, great big black thing with red eyes. So they started bonding over bloody, dogs or stuff like that, like people do. And then they say, where shall we get back anyway? That's what's bloody gone on. And they got back together, old Sabbath did, and then they bloody got that bloke from Rage Against the Machine. They don't learn, do they? They don't bloody learn. Where's Bill Ward, everybody said? But they made up for it, didn't they? Now, poor old Ozzy, he's passed on, hasn't he, So we'll never see the likes of that one again. But anyway, The Forbidden is a bloody good album. It's actually good. Everyone thinks it's terrible, but it's quite good, right? And in terms of riffage and sort of Black Sabbath stuff, once you get past Tony's vocals not being Ozzy Osbourne and Cozy Pal's drums being a bit... And I didn't say as well, I forgot to say this, bloody hell, I do apologise. Yeah, when people bought the album, what did they stick on that first track on the album, the first one that you heard? Bloody bit of rapping from Ice-T. Yeah, that put everybody off it. So when I first heard it, as soon as I heard that, I was so upset I didn't really listen to the rest of it. Well, I couldn't, because I'd picked it up and thrown it across the room. Right, I had. Beryl, my wife, said, what the hell are you doing? Throwing a Black Sabbath album across the room? That's sacrilege, isn't it, Dave? And I said, well, it is sacrilege, but there was a bit of bloody rap on it, and I didn't want it bloody poisoning my stylus. All the rapping going down the stylus and making it go all wonky and start bloody, putting offensive swearing on and bloody talking about hoes and bottoms and things like that on everything, my arse and all that type of thing, and F you mother effing effer, all that bit. I don't want all that going down my bloody stylus, dirtying it all up. Well, I don't know if the bloody cleaner thing I've got for it will bloody do. That will suffice to clean away all that potty language that them rap fellas say. But I wish I hadn't thrown it across, but giving it a listen now, it's all right. So, there we go. The Forbidden it's bloody all right. So I would rank it at probably bloody all right. Thank Brummy Dave for jumping in, giving me a bit of a rest. Managed to go for, went to the toilet, fed the goldfish, and all that bit. That's not a euphemism, I actually did feed the goldfish. And anyway, thanks for Dave for, because I've been quite serious on this one, as you've seen. Serious critiquing, and I didn't know what to do with the old Black Sabbath there. But I think it's right. I think it's a good album as well, so I agree with Dave. Right, moving on to 8, we have It's Hard by The Who. So, 1978, Keith Moon passes away. They go and get Kenny Jones, brilliant drummer, who played in the Faces, brilliant drummer. He comes in. This is the sort of story that everyone tells. He wasn't very good because he couldn't play like Keith Moon. He didn't have that sort of abandon. And old Roger Daltrey, he's up front. Well, he goes, where's the Keith Moon-ness? I need Keith Moon-ness. I don't like it. They get into the studio and they make this album. It's hard and it's absolutely terrible because it lacks all the stuff. Plus, it's the 1980s and the 1980s production spoils it. Right. Is that true? Well, the answer is no. I've never listened to this album till last night, and I put it on, and I really liked it. I liked it. And the thing is this idea that Kenny Jones was no good for The Who. He was in the bloody Who for years and years. It seemed all fine back at the time. No one went on about it at all, right? Until The Who naturally, did its thing, and then it got into that sort of legacy period, which started off with them revamping Tommy, and I think they got Simon Phillips in for that, which you would, Simon could do that. I understand that. But Kenny Jones doesn't play like Simon Phillips. Simon Phillips is jazz rock virtuosity, right? Everything is absolutely precise. Kenny Jones has an incredible groove, but some of the ways he's playing around the toms and the fills he's doing, it's quite flowery. There's something there where I don't think it's that removed from Keith Moon. You got to understand, every single drummer is removed from Keith Moon. That's the whole point. That's the point, right? There's nobody that sounds like him. I can't think of anybody that really could do it justice, really. And nobody plays like that. You can't expect anybody to. So The Who either stopped or they got another drummer in. Kenny Jones was a good choice. This album is not 1980s produced. It's tight. There's some good songs on there. The playing's great. The guitar playing's great. The way the vocals work, it's a good album. It's Hard's a good album. Without a doubt, I do not understand this. So I've rated this one good, right? And I think sometimes people don't listen with their ears. I think this is what this is really showing up. They listen by listening to the story, and a story gets attached to these. Anyway, we're at the album, which Q Magazine once said was the worst album ever made. At number 9, we have from another Birmingham band, Duran Duran, their album Thank You, which was them thanking all the artists that they'd influenced by doing a cover of their albums. Now, Duran Duran are a big band, big pop band. They've had lots of hit singles. They carried on, even once the original lineup had split up. They managed to, bring in Warren Cucurulo on guitar, Sterling Campbell on drums, and they did some incredible some incredible songs. Now I've said that, I've put myself off. Just carry on, Andy. Yeah, so the point is, when they come to do this, they're not a spent force at all. And so, calling the album Thank You, which is a thank you to the bands that they love, plus it's also named after the track Thank You by Led Zeppelin that they cover, would have earned all these artists money. Now Led Zeppelin don't need it, but there's a lot of different bands on there. And it's a really eclectic mix. You've got Sly and the Family Stone, you've got Public Enemy, you've got The Doors, you've got Led Zeppelin. It's a really interesting mix. It's got a whole host of players on it. Now, the reason why I'm such a fan of this album is because of the array of drummers on it. I believe that Sterling Campbell, which is a great drummer's on there, but it had the great Terry Bozzio, and back then I used to buy everything that Terry Bozzio played on. I was one of those types. And I believe another of my favourite drummers, I'm not sure, but off the top of my head, I seem to remember that maybe Tony Thompson, the late great Tony Thompson of Chic, might have been on there. If he's not, I apologise. But the drumming's great, the playing's great, and you get their take on all these tunes. They do interesting arrangements of everything, right? They're not pretending it's an originals album. It is what it is. It's a covers album. Now, do you remember when Neil Peart, after his wife and his daughter had died, and he went away, didn't he? Then he came back, and Rush got together, and they did a short album of cover versions. Everyone understood what that was. That was the band just getting back together, saying hello, getting in the studio and just oiling the cogs, right? And people accept it like that. I don't think those cover versions are anywhere near as good as what we get on this Duran Duran album. So why is it people can't just take this at face value and go, this is Duran Duran just doing a load of cover versions, right? If you don't want Duran Duran doing a load of cover versions, this is not the album for you. But if you like those artists and you want to hear Duran Duran's versions, then this is the album for you, and I think they do it very well. But I suppose the argument that the critics would say is they didn't do it very well. So why did they do it very well? What is it about it? Well, I think it's one track. I think it's the Public Enemy track. I think it's 911 is a joke. When they do that one, and also they do White Lines, but White Lines has got a riff and it's sort of got a chorus. But I think the fact that they dared, a Birmingham band dared to cover that, and that Simon Le Bon dared to sing lyrics which should have come out of the mouth of someone like Chuck D, right? Now this is really odd, and I might be wrong, maybe it's not this, but a lot of the criticism that I read at the time was pointing to the fact that what the hell Simon Le Bon singing this for? Robert Plant can sing about levees breaking, you know, and how he was taught to weep and moan by the levee breaking. But Simon Le Bon can't do the similar thing with more updated music that's come from the sort of African American community in America. I think that's where it resides, and I think when this album came out, we were going into that sort of music of black origin, Mobo, here in the UK, which was very strange for that to happen in my country, because obviously the lineage of black people in my country, they've come from the West Indies, were citizens of the United Kingdom and came in with Windrush. And the slave experience that drove and possibly ignited 20th century popular music, that wouldn't necessarily be in this British community. I find this, we're just stressing into a whole bunch of pretenses and contradictions, and I think that, which is why I put this second to last, as we get to the end of this is really what this is about. All of this is virtue signalling, and there's nothing wrong with it. The albums we like, the songs we like, the albums that we, you know, put under our arm, you know, when you walk along, you know, if you had like 3 albums, you'd put the one facing out that everyone can look at because that's the cool album. People are going to judge you by it, you know. This is what it is. I'm sat here with my Cardiacs t-shirt on, you know, which is very pretentious in a way to be sat here with this on, isn't it? Because most people don't know who this is, and the people who do know who this is getting very excited about the fact that I wore Cardiacs t-shirt. Now I've made reference to it, all right? So, you know, I could be sat here with an ABBA t-shirt on, but then that would be being postmodern. But I'm not being postmodern with this one on, am I? This is all a very sophisticated way of judging what we like and what we don't like in reality. And I think that's what we've got here, is to some extent it's the story that goes behind it, but to another extent it's a stay in your lane argument, basically. People can't leave their lane. Black Sabbath did an album with a producer from Body Count, it's got Ice-T on it. Brilliant. You know, good on old Tony Iommi for trying something different. Good on him. Good on bloody Duran Duran for seeing if they could cover Public Enemy tracks, you know. Good on David Bowie for, you know, embracing that whole sort of electro-poppy, Madonna, drum machine-y type of pop music, you know. And good on Metallica for exploring their true dark side rather than some pretend immature dark side that usually goes with heavy metal. So there's all good things to celebrate here. What have we got at number 1 here? Now this isn't the worst album on the list, but I've left it to the last for a reason. For me, it's the artist that is the ultimate artist. When you want to prove you know what you're talking about, when you want to prove that you know about music, when you want to show your taste off, it's really down to this bloke. And it all exists and it starts and ends with this fella, Bob Dylan. Now what I find interesting with Bob Dylan is even I am going to say that those first 4 or 5 albums are sublime. Even I'm going to say they're possibly the most important albums in rock history, and they set alight all rock music, and I believe that's the case. Is that Bob Dylan's talent? Well, he's a very single-minded man, and he makes decisions. Where's the bloody microphone? It's right over down here, isn't it? Has that been picking me up? Keep doing this. When Dave left, he just bloody threw his coat on the floor, put the microphone on the floor. It does work over a diff. I don't know why I'm even pinning it on. It's a very good microphone, but it gives you a nice rich resonance when it's up close. So I do apologise for that, all that echoiness. You've had 11 minutes. Oh, God. I'm trying my best here. Should I start again? The trouble is, if I start again, these points I've said will be lost because I've structured this list to arrive here with the point I wanted to make with Duran Duran, the virtue signalling point, and now we go into uncharted territory with Bob Dylan. So you'll just have to, if you couldn't hear that first bit, I don't know what to say. I'll do an edit round it. I don't know. It's all gone wrong, you see. It's all gone wrong. This has gone wrong. It's one of those videos that's gone wrong. It was doing really well up to then, but I've gone wrong, you see. Okay? This is like the videos I used to make years ago when I was back in the garage. All the surrealism and all that came out of me really not being able to edit back in the old days. I'm not saying I couldn't edit. I didn't have the means to edit. And so when I went wrong, I really just had to talk my way and get out to the other side of it. And that sort of created a way that I do videos where I incorporated my mistakes. And sometimes, if you were clever enough, when you examined what had gone wrong and you pitted it against what you were talking about, sometimes you could spot a relevance which would switch your brain on and make you go down a different avenue. Now, what I was about to talk about is Bob Dylan is massively important, okay? He's incredibly important. Those first albums are incredible, but if you take an album like Self-Portrait, the Dylan fans don't like it. They don't like it. Dylan has to do something for them to like him. I don't know if you've noticed this, right? Now, I'm not a massive Dylan fan, but I want to be a Dylan fan. I want to be in the club because I don't quite get it, right? I don't quite get it. Bought Blonde on Blonde when I was very young, and I was absolutely disgusted at how awful that album was. Now, I'm sure me as older, and I'm listening to it, but I'd be listening to it intellectually. I wouldn't be sat there, with the headphones on, engrossed in the music, taken away. I just wouldn't be, because it's just rubbish. It's horrible. Horrible, jangly, middly, nasally, badly played shite. Probably, innovative shite, but that's what it all sounds like. And every now and then, he does something I quite like, and I think, well, that's quite nice. And I went back to Blonde on Blonde recently, and I thought, something about Bob Dylan. Forgetting all the lyrics and all that pretentious stuff. And I'm not saying lyrics are pretentious, but I'm just saying, just park that on the side. Musically, he writes a damn good tune. When someone else sings one of his tunes, you suddenly realise, when the Byrds do Mr. Tambourine Man, you see what a brilliant bit of tuniness we have there. Twisty and turny, and tells a story, and the ups and downs of the vocal line mirror the ups and downs of the lyrics, right? So when he starts to veer off, now the thing is, I find with Bob Dylan is that when he does veer off, he goes back to the history of music. He may do a soul cover or an old blues cover, or he might bring some singers in and try and do something like a Motown thing. And he will often show you, it's a little bit of a glimpse of going, I do know this, really. That he's in a position in time and space in the 20th century where he's acquired an incredible knowledge of 20th century popular music, but he's also acquired a whole bunch of knowledge of who he is and what he wants to do. And he's at the right time. And he makes the right decisions, you see. So when we go to this Down in the Groove, which I believe was made in the 1980s? I'm not sure, actually. Don't know when it was made. But I put it on last night, and it opens up with Let's Stick Together. You know that tune? Canned Heat played it. Brian Ferry did it. They're the two famous versions. It's from some chap in the early 60s. I can't remember, but it doesn't really matter. But it's a good song. So he opens up doing a cover version of that. Now, when I heard Dylan sing it, I suddenly realised what it was about. these two have had a kid. They've got a kid, but they want to split up. And the ones saying we shouldn't split up. And he's going through all the positive things, but they need to stay together for this kid. Right? Now, I never got that when Ferry sung it. I never got that when Canned Heat sung it, to be honest. When Canned Heat sung it, it seemed like late 60s, you know, blues revivalists wanting to sound authentic with something that was, you know, pointing back to another time. When Brian Ferry sang it, I had no idea that he was trying to get some bird to come back with him. He doesn't need to do that, old Ferry, does he? Persuade birds to stick with him. You know, so Brian Ferry is the worst person to sing it in a way. But of course, he reduces the song just to its pop song nest. Dylan doesn't. Dylan somehow reminds you of what the song's about. I find once the pretentious people are away and I'm dealing with an album that everyone said is crap, and then I listen to it, suddenly it's not like I appreciate Dylan musically, but my knowledge of 20th century music kicks in and I start to think, oh, it's very clever what he's doing here. Oh my God, listen to the way he's singing this one. That's like Howlin' Wolf. Now that one's like so-and-so. Now he's gone back to the Carter family here. That's got a little bit of Motown. Oh my God, he did a guitar solo. It's almost like Eric Clapton on it. And you just hear all these things coming in that show you he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing, and maybe he's, you know, this album's called Down in the Groove, right? That's the sort of title that I expect some black American 70s funk band to do. Not Dylan. Does he understand the groove? Well, he does. He's playing the groove here. So why doesn't he play the groove normally? Bob, why don't you play it normally? Well, because sometimes he needs the vocals to come forth, right? It's like... It's like Ornette Coleman. Ornette Coleman's a jazz musician that emerged in the 1960s, and he broke jazz by saying, you don't have to follow the chord progressions if you don't want to. And what Dylan did fundamentally was he came out and he said, you know these songs here, you don't have to follow the pop star bloody cultural map that's been foisted upon you. You don't have to sit there with a cool haircut and a silvery suit on singing it in some crooner's voice. Don't have to do it. Right? And when you do this, what it exposes is the fact that the lyrics have a meaning. And if they're your lyrics, your voice shines through. It's almost like the same thing Ornette was saying. And I think I know that with Bob Dylan. Right? But anyway, the point is here. This is a good album. Good album. So that's where we're at. So that was a funny video, wasn't it? How does it relate to the mistake? Well, I have to be honest. The real obvious thing is the fact that Brummy Dave is not real. He is an invention of me. He's an alter ego. He's a collection of things I put on and take off, right? And I do it to provide the antithesis of what I do, which is like a regular bloke just saying what they think rather than the sort of highfalutin pretentious nonsense that I go on about for hours on end. He provides a foil to me. It really is an embodiment of the great dialectic. Now here, I decided in the middle of the video to stop. When I got to Black Sabbath, I stopped the video, got changed, and I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do the change. Maybe I'll do just a jump cut. Dave will suddenly appear, and when he's finished, it'll go back. He'll just appear. Now, of course, everyone knows it's me. You'd have to be an idiot not to know it's me. I don't need any in the comments going, oh my God, Andy, Brummy Dave's you, right? We could jump out of the pretense, and then we'll jump back straight into it. The pretense. Okay? The pretense. How does that relate to this video? It relates to my pretense. It relates to the fact that normally when I'm doing one of these, I'm going through the 10 worst this, the 10 worst that. For entertainment, I'm doing something. Now, what's the value of that? What is the value of me doing it? Am I telling the truth there? Or am I lying? And what am I doing here in taking these albums and actually trying to argue them up? Why would I try and be an iconoclast at the one. I'm not saying this, I'm asking you like a test. I don't know why I'm doing it, but it seems to be working and people like it. Why am I an iconoclast to come out here and I rubbish Van Morrison and Bruce Springsteen? Now, I do genuinely dislike all those, but I dislike Bob Dylan just as much, but I don't do it to Bob. And so here I've argued all these people up, and still, when it came to Bob Dylan, I still argued Bob up. What does it all mean, Andy? I'm asking myself, what are you doing here? What is the worth of this? Does it have any worth? You know. And why did Dave just appear halfway through? What does it mean? Why did Dave appear?
If you've got it on the way to the back side, what I was going to suggest, Olive, as you back home, would you...
Can you hear that? Somebody bloody shouting outside the door. You know, I got my little mic on, so hopefully that didn't pick up. I've got my head down at the moment, making videos. If you notice, there hasn't been that many performance videos in my videos. I'm just turning up here. It's like a job now. I'm turning up here. I sit in this part of the room. It's all set up. I do my video. I go home. All right. And tomorrow I'll do my video and I go home. I'm coming up with the 10 of this, the 10 of that. I've really gone to something which is, it works. Now the views have gone up. The money's gone up and the channel is now going up. It's all upwards, like massively. Massively. Me doing this, just turning up like a job and giving the people what they want, is working. And I think I had almost resigned myself that this week would be sort of top 10 week. 10 worst albums, you know, how bad are they? So I'm doing another worst video again. I know that. The viewers are coming in, they're all watching that. Okay? And then Brummy Dave appears halfway through. And this video will only really have any worth if there's quite a hefty audience in, because the hefty audience that are watching this now is the audience I've attained after many years of doing these YouTube videos. So here we are at the end of this video. Some of you has probably switched off, but some people are hanging around and go, this isn't not the norm, what Andy does. But I promise you it was. There was a time many years ago, and the ones who've been here since day one will tell you, there was a time many years ago when this was the norm. Right? I used to do all sorts of strange stuff, unplanned. Right, I would wrestle with what I was trying to do back then in front of the audience. Now I still do that, but I do it in a way where, like this, I know exactly what I'm doing. You know. And then I was annoyed when the first time the mic wasn't on, it was great. That little mistake I could cover. But the second one, I thought, has it actually ruined the video? Oh no, you need the mic. And suddenly, a professionalism crept in, which is, there's too much professionalism here. That's what it is. There's too much, you know, it's too much. There's just too much of everything, right? I've got to get back to really, truly not knowing what I'm doing, because I'm not happy and I feel burnt out. The reason I feel burnt out is because the energy source isn't there anymore, right? Maybe I need to feel burnt out, but I feel burnt out. That's the bottom line. And you know, I'm doing these videos. I'm trying to keep it to a minimum. I'm trying to turn up in the morning, film the video, hour, go back home, edit it, put it up, go to bed. Do the same thing every single day. And that is not like the 14 hours a day that I was spending creating videos in the old days. I've been able to buy myself a little bit of time. But the heart's dropped out of it. You know, there is heart there. I know what I'm doing. But what you're seeing at the moment, right, this part of this video, which really is embodied in it going wrong. When it went wrong, I went, oh, bugger, I've gone wrong now. Can I edit this? Can I fix it? Why should I fix anything? Why do I have to fix stuff? It is what it is. It is what it is. Same with all these albums. Every single album on this list was some artists trying their best to make a good album. And then why do people not like them? Because there's a story behind it. None of these albums are bad albums. They're all okay to good albums. If you put them on, you will hear the love. You will hear the blood and sweat. You will hear the excitement of doing something different, perhaps. It's all full of stuff that is great. Absolutely great. Right? So as much as I could come in here and say I hate this and I hate that, right? But I'm poking at something when I do. I'm poking at the establishment and what they tell us is good and saying to you, you know, you can like whatever you want to like. That's really what I'm saying. But I don't want to get pulled into this sort of postmodernist idea that means everything's good. All right? But that's balanced by the other side. I have got too stuck in my position here on this channel. Yep. I'm not learning anymore. I'm not. I pretend I'm learning, but I'm not. I pretend I'm learning, but I'm not. And then when that went wrong, I was frustrated because when I thought about it, I thought, well, all that stuff you were saying, you were saying that you can't do it again. You'll just be trying to remember what you said. Because the way you structure your videos is you don't know what you're about to say until you get to the end of the video. But sometimes, perhaps, to get there, it really has to seriously go wrong. And you have to have the guts to be able to sit in front of the camera like this going, I know this is all going to go in, and I don't know whether this is worth anything, but I'm going to let them see it. I'm going to let them see the real me, and I'm going to let them see me trying to work out where the hell I am and what the hell I'm doing at the moment in front of their very eyes. That's what I'm going to do on this video. So that's what you've got. I didn't mean it to happen, but it's happened. So I'm going to leave it there because I'm perturbed. I'm definitely perturbed. But if I was to step back and go, what the hell's just happened then? It would be this. I can challenge the establishment by pulling down these giants that the establishment think are great and trying to knock all these pretentious types off the thing. But in the end, once you've knocked them down and you look at them, there will be something good there because there actually is something good there. And maybe now I actually have to invert that now and start to look into what the establishment think is bad. And maybe I need to explore why it's not bad and why we should value it and why going forward as the sort of postmodernist epoch that contains rock and roll and all this stuff that we love here, as that is collapsing and those values are just falling into the floor, what are the counter values that were contained in rock and roll that we can actually salvage and go, actually going forward, nobody realised, but this was really powerful. A little bit like when in the 1960s we went back to those incredible rural blues artists that were walking around America in the 1930s that no one gave a toss about at the time. And then we suddenly saw something of value in there. Maybe that is the real job of someone critiquing the great, vast, treasure trove of 20th century arts, artifice, music, pop music, whatever it is, film, television, adverts, whatever it is. As we, go through those a fine-tooth comb, and because it's all up on YouTube now, everything that existed in that period, if it's existing and it's there, it's up on YouTube. And I'm on YouTube, and people going on there to check out some bloody old thing from the old days, and then I sit there alongside it, critiquing it, because it's all there. They're sifting through it. I'm one of these people that when I go down the refuse tip, okay, I can't leave. I can walk over to one of those things, especially the ones where they stick all the electronic items in, and I can sit there with my arms folded like that on the edge of the skip and look in there, and I could just watch it for ages. All the promise of the future embodied in all these items, and how they were marketed, and how whole bands and how whole music movements were based upon these electronic items that sit there rotting now, past their sale-by date, worthless in a way, except perhaps for maybe the bits of metal and chemicals that are in there. And you want to salvage them. And sometimes you do, you know, sometimes I've looked, you know, sometimes, because you're not allowed to take anything off the refuse tip with my tip, they tell you off. So I have to smuggle it out. I have to go and drop something in and sort of drop it in and then pick it up. I've done all sorts of tricks to nick stuff out of the tip. All sorts of tricks. That's what we're doing here. That's what's going on here. The reason why people watch my videos is because we're all ruffling through that skip and looking at what was once shiny and new and wondering whether it has any value now. Now I feel I've got somewhere. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.